Welcome to the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes, showing you how to do wholesaling deals consistently without having to go on seller appointments. Learn the key tips and strategies that Brandon's students use to find deeply discounted properties that are pennies on the dollar, all while avoiding wear and tear on their vehicle, body, and freedom. Whether you're looking for your first deal or your next deal, it's time to send more offers with your host, Brandon Barnes.
Hey, Zach, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Brandon, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, as we were talking pre-show, I know you're used to talking about your story, but I think the biggest thing that the listeners can get is how you were able to transition from wholesaling to building passive income through your rental properties, through now your development and build to rent. You're doing a whole bunch of stuff, but all started with wholesaling. I think that that's the dream for a lot of listeners. So let's just get right to it.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll try to make this as concise as possible as I can be long-winded, Brandon. But just my story, as many people do, I come from a background that has nothing to do with real estate. I read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, as many people do, along with many other books that just consumed information and started to change my mindset around how to get started investing in rental real estate, how to think about assets and just investing in general. My wife and I have a background in healthcare. We're both optometrists by education. I was an Air Force captain for 7 years as I was on scholarship. And that's where I started investing in rental real estate. My first venture into real estate was wholesaling because, as many of us know, it's kind of this nice entry point where you can create like some quick cash and low hanging fruit with that. I think is a low barrier of entry, low risk, things like this. And it was very interesting. Now, this is about 20 years ago when we started wholesaling.
So before the crash?
So 2000, this would have been, 2018 would have been 10 years. So yeah, we're probably pre-crash and through the 2008 period. Now, I was stationed in North, because I was a young captain in the Air Force. I was we were in North Dakota. And so this is an area that really wasn't significantly impacted by like that 2007 to 2011 period markets. And you see that a lot in the Midwest. There's not a huge fluctuation in home prices. That also means not crazy appreciation probably over time. But we were old school wholesaling. So this is when we could still put up bandit signs on street corners without the city complaining too much. I ran newspaper ads. My best and most successful lead generator was classified ads. So in the newspaper, we actually had a lot of people being more in a rural location that had farmhouses. And so we actually wholesaled some farms. And I know you'll ask me about some interesting stories, but like our best wholesale deal we did, we made $50K on it and turned it within a week. That was a squirrel infested house in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And it's just location wise, it was good. We'll talk about that. But anyways, I started
like when you say squirrel infested, were they in the attic or were they in the house?
Dude, there was like everywhere. It was they had taken over the house and there was 50 squirrel plus. Like the house was condemned. And so we had to go through the process of hiring exterminators. Like we went into the house to look at it, right? That's what we put it under contract to go look at it. And we usually renegotiate the offers, but we want to get it under contract. This one, we went into it and we immediately left. We came back in hazmat suits. But it turned out to be one of our best deals. But anyways, from wholesaling, so, we eventually found out like that's a great business to start. That's a job. We were earning money, but really we know that wealth is built in buy and hold rental real estate. And so we started to kind of learn, Brandon, how to build a portfolio that we could hold on to. We flipped some of these houses as well, but really we learned how to take the money that we earned in wholesaling and put it into investing, specifically speaking, long-term buy and holds, not even in our own backyard, but we were more intentional. This was a very pivotal moment for us, for my wife and I, because it changed the trajectory of our lives and our investing career, where we learned how to invest across the country, not just where we were local, because that's what we knew and felt comfortable with, but being intentional investing out of state where the best opportunity was. And that allowed us to retire ourselves early from our career paths in medicine by building a buy and hold portfolio across the country in the best markets. And now fast forward to today, that's what we assist our clients do on our active business. We're a turnkey provider. And so Rent to Retirement is the nation's leading turnkey investment company where we identify the best locations. We build houses or rehab them, lease and manage them for investors. So no matter what you're doing in real estate or in life, we can help you access the best deals across the country and build a successful portfolio. So that's about as quick of my story as I can give you.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And I'm glad that we're speaking because turnkey providers, you never know really who to trust. You've had, some success stories for sure, but you've also had some that are not. And there's a lot of investors that don't want to take on the project and do the work. So turnkey providers definitely fill a really good void in the market and provide a really good service. So definitely happy to get you connected here. And I'm super excited about, this is how the conversation is going already. I'm curious though, and I want you to dispel that myth of, can you do a good volume wholesaling while you have a day job, right? How did that look in the beginning? You were an optometrist, you and your wife, but you were operating this wholesale entity. How did you make that work?
The best thing about wholesaling and in real estate in general is that you can start it as a side hustle, right? You can keep your day job and it doesn't matter what that is. I mean, I was literally in between patients. I had my Google Voice set up. My Google Voice, that's how like I said, I was rudimentary, man.
That was my first phone call, phone number 2.
Yeah. And it would transcribe the messages, right? So that you get an email or a text of the transcription. I wasn't able to offer those. This is before answering. I had an answering service or whatever. But you can very easily build a scalable business if you're just a hustler, right? In having that day job, it can be a side gig, a side hustle where you just have to put in the hours and you can create systems around that and eventually outsource those systems. But yeah, I mean, I remember in between patients, I would see 12 patients a day. I would have 10 minutes. I created efficiencies around my active job where, I would do the note taking while I was seeing the patient. And there little hacks, right? That I could buy my time back where I had 10 minutes to make a phone call to a potential motivated seller. In between patients, I would go and see those houses after work. Like you absolutely can do this while you're working full time. And that's the place I think you should start because it takes a little bit of time to ramp up your business. But make no mistake, you are building a business, whether you're wholesaling, flipping, whatever the case is, treat it like a business, but you got to dedicate the time and you can do that part-time starting out.
Love it. And so that first kind of transition to taking down property, did you use a lot of the active kind of wholesale income? Did you get a loan? Was it a mix of your day job and what you were doing and just finally found a property that it makes sense to take down?
The majority of the deals we did first were just assignments of contract or double closes. The most important relationship that I found early on was a title company that just understood what we were trying to do versus beat myself up so much trying to work with title companies that we're not helping the transaction. But we actually didn't need funding for a lot of these deals, at least the wholesale deals early on, because we would either have a double close where even the lender, a lot of times there were cash deals that made it easy. But even having a lender, they would be able to close same day. The A to B contract, the B to C, they would be able to do a back-to-back closing, or it's just an assignment of contract where your fees are obviously shown to the end buyer. And we never needed transactional money for most of these deals. These were lower priced properties. Now on the stuff that we were buying, the first property I bought was a house hack. I was able to buy a duplex because I had access to a VA loan, which is no money down, no PMI. That's just part of being a military member. It's fantastic. But bought a duplex, lived in half, rented out the other half, moved out of that one a year later, used another VA loan to buy another one, and just scaled up that way. And then, of course, as we started to earn more money from wholesaling, which we were doing the volume, kind of at our peak in year 2 or 3, we were probably 20 or 30 deals a month consistently. And we were able to use that as down payments for our buy and hold properties that we would buy out of state where there's better opportunity, and so that was a process.
To 30 deals a month. That's a massive operation. Do you think it was a sign of the times, the market that you were in? I mean, that's a good amount of deals each month.
Yeah. I mean, that was, to me, it doesn't seem like a lot. Well, right now, for example, on the turnkey side, we do 80 to 100 a month, is kind of but it grows. Everyone starts at a different point. Right. And some people may hear that and they're like, but you have to start somewhere and grow that over time. But I don't know, man. In North Dakota, there just wasn't there wasn't a lot of people that are like, hey, I'm going to go out to this market, and it was a low populated area. I would expand our wholesaling. Like I work in about a 3-hour radius of us. I would do a lot of driving. These were a lot of rural properties. And houses were 50K or less in most cases. So I don't know. Maybe it was just a little bit of an untapped market. Obviously, things. I'm out of the game now, but obviously things have changed a lot with like online communities and stuff, and it's kind of crazy.
Right. But the challenge is in those smaller markets or more rural markets, there's not as many cash buyers. So how are you finding the buyers for these assignment deals up front? That's a hefty amount of deals. I mean, was there, out of state investors? Did you reach out to international investors to find buyers for some of these deals?
Well, I think that's actually maybe a misconception about local buyers not being cash buyers, because what I quickly realized is there certainly was a lot of people that, in fact, I don't think we worked with any international buyers or outside. Like it was really very much the majority of the buyers were people that wanted to buy a house. They couldn't get access for a loan, or they were rehabbers themselves. They're like, they weren't huge operations. They just saw the opportunity. They didn't have a good deal pipeline because they're probably old school. And a lot of it was, buying at the courthouse steps or whatever. Right. I mean, I did buy some stuff, by the way, at auction, and I would be the only guy that shows up. You know what I mean? There's one other guy that I would meet. He always would outbid me. And guess what? He became my best buyer. You know what I mean? So there's a local community, I think, anywhere. But you don't know until you get into it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely at those price points. And so, all right, let's fast forward. So you make the transition. You're starting to buy and hold. You're house hacking, and you're building this up. When did you decide to say, "Hey, let's be a turnkey provider. Let's make these properties, these buy and hold opportunities available," and then get into the details of how much are you getting these properties ready to be turnkey? How much involved, your team, rehab, etc.
Yeah, so there's a long transition. I mean, when we started wholesaling on the lower price points, like we work in a completely different realm now than those type of properties. That was an entry point for us. But what I was mentioning is that we would take that money and we would use it. We first bought locally, but then we learned how to invest, Brandon, out of state where there was better opportunity. There's better growth markets. So obviously, North Dakota is not the best, most attractive investment market. There's areas that had much higher appreciation, and it was more attractive for multiple reasons. And so we learned how to invest in those areas, and just consistently did that. Like this was not an overnight success, right? Like this took a long time to build up our wholesaling business. It was 6 months before I had my first wholesale deal, right? So a lot of people get discouraged and they get that burnout before they get there. Right. But anyways, so we're talking, I'm condensing today a long time of investing into what seems like a short period. It was not a short period, but we learned how to invest out of state. And we eventually got to the point where we replaced, my wife and I, our active income. We moved out to Colorado. So I'm in Denver now. We moved out to Colorado. We were in private practice. We worked in private practice for 4 or 5 years, but we retired from our career path as doctors by slowly building up our portfolio of rental properties strategically in the right locations. We had a lot of people, friends and family and colleagues that were saying like, hey, we see what you're doing and investing in rental real estate. We see the success you're having. Can you teach us how to do this? Can you help us? Can we invest with you? Can we give you money? There's a lot of people that were hungry just for help. And we realized hey, there's a demand out there beyond just our local colleagues and networks of helping people learn how to get started investing and buy and hold, how to learn how to identify the best markets and tap into those. And we've already built those teams and systems for ourselves. How do we help other people do that? So the majority of the second part of your question of what preparation do we do to the properties? The majority of what we do is build to rent. So this is new construction. And you had mentioned this early on. Turnkey sometimes has a negative connotation because you hear people like a 1950s house that has lipstick rehab on it, right? And it's in a bad location. And then an out-of-state buyer buys it and they just don't have a good experience. Well, that's not us, right? We focus on A and B class locations, new construction mainly. 80% of what we do is new construction, single family, small multifamily. We have short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, long-term rentals. in nice locations that are growing. A lot of this is in the Southeast where the population is growing, where you get double-digit appreciation both in rents and home prices in areas like Texas, Florida, Alabama, Carolinas. And we do some Midwestern stuff that's lower price points. But these are brand new construction houses that are leased and managed, allowing our investors easily to whether take their money and tap into the markets where they get the best returns, where they're not having to buy themselves another job being a landlord, especially out of state, and learning how to do that. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new investor and you're learning and you just have capital, you want to make a smart investment. If you're a full-time wholesaler and you need to take that money and put it into real estate, because guess what? Now you likely can do cost segregation and accelerate your depreciation and things like this to offset your taxable income. Buy and hold rental real estate. It doesn't matter what you're doing to earn money, real estate or not. Learning how to create wealth and financial independence, you have to build a strong buy and hold portfolio in good locations with good teams. And that's what we make available to our investors.
I love that. So that transition, right? You learned how to invest out of state. Were you guys doing some direct marketing? What did that look like? And I'm sure, this is pre the build to rent phase. So you're, acquiring properties to make turnkey. How are you going about that? What did that machine look like?
Well, it was ugly to begin with, and it was cumbersome. I mean, a lot of it was trial and error. Part of us building rent to retirement in the company we have today is because it's like, hey, I wish there was a source or a mentor or a online community where people could help me guide me through this, right? How to invest out of state, how to choose locations that already had the best lenders established, the best property managers, had the market data research done for me. So that's why we developed our company to provide those services. But man, a lot of it was trial and error. We were like, and we bought some turnkey. We bought some of those South Chicago duplexes that were, decent rehabs, but really low income areas where tenants just trashed the houses and had property managed. So we did some of that out of state, but also we're just like trial and error. Sometimes to find, and this is the unfortunate truth in all things real estate and business as well, is like, sometimes you got to go through 20 bad property managers to find a good one, or contractors. And that's just a school of hard knocks, right? It's just doing it. And those lessons can be very costly. But over time, we were more intentional on like, well, let's systematize this. Let's have this 20-point checklist that property management needs to vet they need to meet all 20 of these. And hey, maybe if they meet 16, they can adapt these 4 best practices. Let's have a intentional criteria on areas that we want to invest. We want to be in areas where we can buy below the median house price point, which is $408,000 across the country. Well, we want to be well below that because that means you're going to have the highest tenant pool as well as home buyers. But we also want to be in nice locations, right? We don't want to be in the $50,000 price ranges. Our average house prices are $150,000 to $300,000, so $200,000 to $225,000 on average for even new construction housing. Depending on where you live, like that could be a down payment on $1 million property if you're in coastal area. Well, there are markets that still exist where you can get a quality house for that, a quality tenant, and have good returns. We want to be in areas that have landlord-friendly legislation, low taxes, future population, economic growth, have high rent ranges relative to home prices, where we can make sure that the property's cash flow, areas that have a diversity of industries, not are just reliant on, say, oil or gas or things like this. So I could go on and on, Brandon, but it's developed a lot, right? And a lot of it is just trial and error.
So just let's take it back, put yourself in your shoes, years ago, and you're saying, hey, I want to be this turnkey provider. I want to invest. I want to start finding these properties out of state. Like, what is the first thing that you're going to go out and do? Is it a direct mail campaign? Like after you choose the market, like how are you actually doing some of the outreach?
So if you're asking me if someone is like, hey, how does someone get started out of state, and start to build things like
started out of state to be a turnkey provider?
Well, the first thing to do is like build your own portfolio. Go and develop a track record, right? I think that's the first thing you do is learn yourself. That way you can teach other people how to do it and provide those services for someone, but you got to do it yourself. You could leverage teams that are already established, like for example, you could buy turnkey like we did. You could learn the process. And this is me saying like, hey, you could learn from us to become a competitor, right? Like I don't fear that at all, because I think that actually all tides rise, when we're collaborating with the right people. But You could tap into an immediate system. You could learn by yourself. You could tap into a local RIA and start connecting. This is a networking game. This is a people business, and it's all about finding the right people. Probably the two key people, or the first most important person you could find, is a local broker or agent that actually invests in real estate. And that's the keyword, actually knows it, right? Is actually an investor, because there's so many agents and brokers out there. But if you find someone that's actually in the game, that knows a market, they should have a contact for property management for you. They should have some contacts for lenders for you, for insurance providers. They should be able to speak confidently about the locations. But every broker and agent you talk to is going to try to tell you what you want to hear to work with them and sell you. So you got to see through the nonsense and work with the right people. Going to the local RIA groups where there's actual investors that are actually doing deals. Some of those are virtual. Sometimes you got to fly out to the area. You got to drive the streets. You got to know the market. Like, it takes some time. But the best thing you could do, whether you're wanting to build a turnkey business, whether you're wanting to just invest, for yourself, is to just go and make some investments and figure it out, right? And then start to build systems around that and add the right people to your team.
Love it. And then you mentioned that, top two people that you could find. First was a broker that actually does this business. Was the next one going to be a property manager or a contractor?
Yep. Thank you. 100%. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. And so before you got into doing the new construction thing, I'm still curious, like, what was the marketing method for starting to go out into some of these other territories and finding properties that you could take down and turn turnkey?
I love build to rent, Brandon, because from a buy and hold perspective, they're just very predictable. They usually have, low maintenance, right? And we have manufacturer warranties on things. They are attracting the best quality tenants because everyone likes new stuff. They are usually, when you're talking new construction, in most cases, these are up and coming areas, whether you're building yourself, doing ground up construction, hiring builders, buying land, or just buying from a builder that's where a property's already done. Usually new construction is in up and coming areas. That's why people are developing and building in these areas where there's demand. Following the supply and demand trends is probably the best thing that you can do to set yourself up for success. And you usually see better rent appreciation, better home price appreciation by new construction. But as far as like our specific process, we do one of two main strategies. One is we just buy new construction from builders. And both that's us and our investors. One, we're able to go into larger builders and negotiate wholesale pricing because of the volume that we bring with our community, where we'll just scoop up, 100 houses or 150 houses over a 6-month period of time. And we'll commit to that because we know that we can negotiate prices down because of that. And that's another builder building that.
And so, right, when you say you're buying from another builder, you're not talking about like an individual lot builder. You're talking about somebody that has building out a neighborhood in a community, and you can buy a bundle of them and get wholesale pricing.
Yeah, that could be community, could be infill lots, but these are usually national builders. Got it. D.R. Horton, for example, they're the nation's largest home builder, and we were the largest buyer from D.R. Horton this past year, just because we were able to come in and do volume. The other aspect now, and again, that's a big, that's a business thing that we've developed, and that's not everyone can come in and just do that. Right. The other thing that we can do where, the average scrappy person can come in is identify land. Like, there's a lot of areas in the Southeast, like in Florida, for example, Southwest Florida or Central Florida, where you can buy lots for $10,000 or $20,000 or possibly a little bit more that are infill lots. They're in a nice community. They're surrounded, and you can hire a builder to do ground up construction for you. Sometimes you may have to take out a construction loan for that. You may need a deposit. There's a lot of different ways that you can individually go. And there's people that wholesale land, right? That may be something, right. We buy a lot of land from wholesalers. That maybe is something to think about, because there's a lot of builders that want land. They need land, and you can go and negotiate those prices. And that's kind of an easy entry point into the new construction space. But if you can find land that's reasonable, and that's just one piece of the equation, and have a builder build a house for you in most cases. And there's a lot of details with this, right? But you can build a house where it's worth significantly more than you're into it for when it's done. So you can either sell the house at a profit. You can, do like the burst strategy where you're pulling your money back out and refinancing it, or sometimes you can have a rental property that still has equity with no money in. That's a way that's, the average person could get into that. But there's a lot of variable and a lot of risk when new construction markets fluctuate, construction changes. So just be conscious of that and educate yourself, and maybe work with a person that could teach you how to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I know I'm kind of doubling back to this again, but I know you were doing some of the newspaper article or classified listings for your marketing outreach when you were wholesaling. But when you started to go into some of these virtual markets, what was some of your direct marketing outreach when you were trying to purchase an off-market property, not new construction, an off-market property in another market, not your own? What was some of the marketing that you were using to do so?
We've always dumped a lot of money into direct mail to targeted lists. We targeted lists that had equity, as a 50% equity. We use some tax lists or probate lists and things like that. And that's just a numbers game. Now, I don't know. Now, today we use less of that, and actually we buy honestly the majority from wholesalers. So we let those guys do the work for us, and we have some really good relationships there because we see the value. Like, I'm happy to pay $10,000 and $20,000 assignment fees sometimes for the right deal. Yeah. But we do focus a majority on new construction. And so it's more about like, let's identify a location that we know we can be successful with ground up construction. And then we're either buying from land banks. There's online communities and there's just companies that just land bank, and that's what they do. Or there's individual owners or wholesalers for land. So we do very little, Brandon, actually finding our
marketing at this point
of our own marketing. But there was a point before we transitioned to that where we started to have a strong presence in locations. Like, I think it's a hard entry point to really capitalize on a certain market. And I think in today's world, and I'm not probably the best person to speak on this, but like, you really got to create your niche, right? Both in location and messaging. There's so many people out there. Like, hey, if you're doing direct market, like there's mailers that are put in front of people all the time. I get them, right? It's just like, it's annoying. It's like,
I bet you get a lot.
So it's like, how do you do, even today while we were on this, I got a text about land that we had already built and sold on, in Florida. I'm just on somebody's list, but, I think you really need to be intentional on your niche and, on your messaging. And if you can hyper focus on a location, like maybe you don't even need a huge online presence. Like for us, on houses that we were building or working on, signs on yards. All of our vans, they had signs on them, right? And so like the messaging locally was there, and people driving by that neighborhood would see that and they would reach out, right? And they're like, or the neighbors would talk. We would send care packages to the neighbors and say, hey, we're just here working on this house. Like, here's our contact information. And we would not only send it out to just the neighboring people, we send it out to everyone within like a 2-mile radius. Where people are like, I don't even know where the hell this house is. And I got this package for these people, but they're talking about how they're improving this house and looking for other deals. And those were some of our best deals, is those referrals from those, from those neighbors, because we sent them a bottle of wine and some crackers or something, you know what I mean? And so it's like planting those seeds, but for that area, that 2-square-mile radius or whatever it was, we were very known in that area from everybody, people that living there, visiting. And so we got a lot of deals through that.
Love it. Love it. Good stuff. Look, while I have you, I do want to ask, I know you are, considered an industry expert in real estate market analytics. Where do you think the real estate market is going? Do you really feel like, housing pricing is going to continue to improve? Or, if you had to look into a crystal ball, what would you say, what are we looking at, over the next year to 2 years?
Okay, well, you can put me on record, and then we'll see where we're at this time. But this is something we track and very closely, right? Because we make a lot of decisions, and this, especially in the new construction industry, like you have to be pretty confident on where you think things are going to start construction. That's not going to be done for a year or two. So, let's back up a little bit and just look at like post-COVID era. We had all-time low interest rates, right? Like probably all-time low interest rates that we'll likely never see again. Government was printing a bunch of money, crazy inflation, crazy home price appreciation. It's interesting. There's a lot of people that sat on the sidelines during COVID because they're like, oh, COVID, right? And then, dude, they missed the boat on just like this appreciation wave. And that just goes to show, like, don't be one of these people that sits on the sidelines. Get involved. Find a way to start investing now. Doesn't matter what the noise is, what the market is. Find a way to take action. So over the past 18 to 24 months, where it stands today, because it's early 2024 as we're recording this, We just went through the most aggressive interest rate increase that we've seen in 4 decades. Now, I'm not talking high interest rate. I'm just talking because we had such a low bottom. The increase has been really aggressive to combat inflation. And now, Jerome Powell has come out and said that interest rates, they plan on dropping them multiple times throughout this year. Before we talk about that, a lot of people anticipated, we're going to have a huge market correction and crash. I mean, and people have been talking about a real estate crash for who knows how long, 15 plus years, right? And it's just crazy. So, but what they don't get is supply and demand. That's economics 101. We look at areas that have an undersupply of housing and over demand. Where's the population going? Right. And a lot of the times, the Southeast is where the opportunity is. In most of our markets over the past 2 years, we've averaged 13% home appreciation and 9% rent appreciation. And you tell that to people and they're like, what? Most markets have stagnated, but there has not been, and this will be very geographically dependent, Brandon, but most markets have not seen a huge drop and decrease in home prices like a lot of people anticipated. However, debt was expensive and the future is a little bit unforeseen. So what that caused is a lot of buyers to back out of the market. And this is large scale institutional buyers as well as the average buyer, which is actually drives the majority of the market, is the mom and pop investors that have less than 10 houses. They're just put a little bit of pause on because cash flow wasn't as good. Well, fast forward where we're at today, because we rode that storm for the past 2 years. Now we've still invested and made smart moves. Now debt was more expensive, but guess what? We'll likely refinance that in the next 2 years. We understand that we can do better deals right now because there's less buyer activity, that even though interest rates are higher and debt's more expensive, we'll just refi that. What we found is that over time, into now where we're looking is that the interest rates are coming down, and likely what's going to happen is a lot of buyers will jump back into the market. And so what we'll see is that likely, even though we've seen stagnation in home prices, we'll be immediately back in a seller's market. And it will likely be a scenario we will have strong appreciation. There'll be a buyer frenzy. I'm talking probably about mid-year into the next 2 years. We've also seen some tax incentives being added back. The 100% bonus depreciation will likely be enacted. So that encourages people to go out and buy more rental real estate. And so our forecast into the next 1 through 3 years is that it'll be, again, a seller's market. We'll see strong appreciation. It'll be more buying activity and competition. All that being said, it'll be a strong rental market, but now is the time to actually buy rental real estate versus, waiting.
Awesome. So look, that's really interesting information. And I also, I'd been hearing about, the supply and demand piece of it is something that folks often don't consider. And just knowing that there was such a low supply of properties available is probably kind of what's kept prices decent. You've given a forecast kind of into the future. Really appreciate it. If you had to consider, where you would want to go, in the next, 5 years, is building new construction something that you think that we'll continue to need to do in the coming years, into the coming decade?
I know it is. Because again, there's some areas, there is a housing crisis in the United States. You see this for affordability reasons, but there is a housing crisis in many, many markets throughout the U.S. All the builders in the world combined cannot produce enough houses that we need. We have something like a 5 million home deficit or something of where, and it's only getting worse over time as more people are moving to the U.S., as population is growing, as well as just how slow construction is, and some housing being outserviced. So what basically all that being said, Brandon, I think there's a strong outlook for the construction industry in the right locations, for real estate in general, especially around residential. I mean, we do a lot of different stuff in real estate. We own some high-end short-term rentals. We own retail centers as well as some industrial complexes, but we always keep a large portion of our investment portfolio in residential real estate. And this is single family and small multi, because we know that's the most predictable and needed type of housing. And that's the most recession proof because people always need a place to live. So we certainly will be focusing on new construction. and focusing on areas where there's an undersupply of housing and where the population is moving, because we know that is just a safe bet. And we're excited about, I love rental real estate because you can add business and, the most tax advantage structures. Like we were talking a little bit about some of the ways, like we have a successful business and we're able to every single year wipe out 100% of our tax liability simply by buying enough rental real estate, right? And we accelerate the depreciation, and then that just gives us more money to then reinvest. And it's this repeated cycle. Guys, you got to learn how to do that kind of stuff. In real estate, it's the most predictable path to wealth. It has more tax benefits than any other asset class. You get the ability to leverage money, leverage other people. It's such a cool industry, and the sky's the limit. So you got to get started somewhere, though. You know what I mean? If wholesaling's it, that's great, but get started, take action, and keep growing and learning.
Amazing stuff. Look, I know you gave me kind of a deal breakdown the squirrel house earlier, but is there any other transaction you have in mind that you can share with us to kind of highlight, some of the interesting times that you've had over your journey?
Man, there's so much, right? And I wanted to talk about the wholesaling stuff because that is, I think, relevant to a lot of your audience. And just to finish the loop on that one, Brandon. So this was a house in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. No one would know that unless you're from that area. Like it is a little bit of a vacation destination, really small community, but it's got a lake there that a lot of people go to. It's just on the border of North Dakota and Minnesota. And so maybe like an hour from Fargo or whatever for locational, but small town. Like who would even think about Detroit? But we had mailers out there. This old lady called us, and her house was condemned. And so that was basically, she's like, I'm going to lose this house. I've had it in my family. And she was older. She was moved into a care home. She just didn't want the house to be condemned. She wanted to be there, to have the house to be a legacy. It wasn't a financial thing. She owned it free and clear. She wanted it to be, it was a legacy thing, where she just didn't want it hurt her emotionally to know that someone was going to come in and condemn it, because these squirrels had just taken it over, man. And they were rabid. Their little beady eyes and hissing at you. They're scary. They hiss at you. They're very territorial. But anyways,
I don't think I've ever gotten that close to like a squirrel nest, right? But I can only imagine.
This was like, the squirrel gang. This was like, the Compton squirrel, like, these were ravenous. And, there was the boss leader squirrel that, but anyways, what we ended up, we put that property under contract for $50,000. We walked through it because we ran the tax assessment. We looked at, before even seeing the house, it probably had like a $250,000 valuation. We put under contract $50K, just kind of rough numbers. We went into it. We're like, holy cow. We looked at what it would cost to go through the paperwork and process and planning to have this house basically removed from the condemnation list with the city county. We had to meet with, city officials and things like this. That took a couple of weeks to do. We renegotiated it for $10,000. So that was a $40,000 reduction. And that was justifiable because there was so much work involved and timeline associated with it. And we sold it in, I think it was 3 days on assignment, or no, we did a double close. We sold it to a flipper for $60,000 within a week. So we made $50K on it. And man, it was a beautiful, yeah, buddy. So it was good. It was but it was a lot of work, right? And we had to go through and we had to figure it out. And that's the beautiful thing about wholesaling is you got to figure it out. You are I think someone told me one time that as a wholesaler, but in general, like you're a transaction coordinator, right? And you're problem solver. And the more creative you can be to solve problems, we ended up turning it over to that flipper that he made probably a couple $100K on it over time. So he got a really good deal as well. But he had to go in and actually fix all the problems that we just identified and presented to him. So that was a really good deal. I got a lot of other ones I could share. I mean, we ground up construction.
We'll be here all day.
I know.
And just as a quick question, just 'cause I'm curious, did you guys have to go through the extermination process, or did the end buyer? And do you know what they did to?
Yeah, it was probably like a $5,000 or $6,000 quote. We didn't actually get the squirrels out. Like we laid out the whole plan. We got quotes. We got multiple extermination quotes. We presented a plan to the city council, then got approval on that because of course we couldn't sell it to someone. That was probably the biggest concrete thing we actually did. because if we didn't, we weren't able to sell it without that was still a question mark, right? If it was going to be, but the reality is he probably could have done a scrape and build on the house. But he ended up preserving it, rehabbing, which is important to the current owner, for preservation. But that was the only concrete thing we did is we got quotes, we got rehab quotes, we got extermination quotes. We actually got approval from the city that said, hey, you got, 6 months. If you do this, this, and this, that will remove the condemnation and then we'll reevaluate. And then we sold that as a package to the end buyer.
Very cool. Very cool. Good stuff. Well, look, we learned a lot, all the insight that you gave about the current market, what's been going on, how, you successfully transition from, working and wholesaling, building that business, and then house hacking your way to building your rental portfolio and now an amazing turnkey provider in the community. I know you're going to share with us a little bit more about that community in a second. But before I let you go, I got to put you through the lightning round. Are you ready for that?
Let's go.
All right. All right. Look, so I have a series of rapid fire questions for you. You don't know the question. I don't know your answer. So just say the very first thing that comes to your mind. What's one book that's been instrumental to your growth as a real estate investor?
Obviously, the Kiyosaki stuff, CASHFLOW, Quadrant, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'll say Gary Keller, the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I'd say that's probably the one I would choose.
Love it. Good stuff. If you could have drinks or coffee with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would say the authors of those books, Gary Keller and Kiyosaki. I've yet to I've met Kim. I've yet to meet Robert. So
awesome. Very cool. What would be your best advice for someone's very first turnkey deal?
Develop a plan on, be very intentional on your goals, not only your immediate goals, but like where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. Learn how to forecast market growth. So many people look at pro formas and like cash flow day one, just based on a pro forma. They lose sight of like growth potential. Learn how to be comfortable. This is actually the real answer here. Learn how to be comfortable investing out of state.
Got it.
Because that seems daunting at first. It's the same process that you follow regardless of where the location is. You just systematize it. Just become comfortable investing out of state, because then the U.S. becomes your landscape. And guess what? There's a lot of interesting markets out there with a lot of excellent opportunity in any market cycle.
Got it. And just to piggyback, follow-up question on that is investing out of state in this particular business. Are you saying that it's important to be a turnkey provider, that you invest out of state for growth opportunity or growth potential? What is the reason that you would give for why it's so essential to be able to invest out of state?
I think to be a very successful investor long term, it's important to build a diversified portfolio across multiple locations. But I also think it's important, the more important aspect is don't be so narrow-minded, focused just on your local market because you think that's what you're comfortable with. I guarantee you, no matter where you're located, there's other markets out there that have better deals, more deals, and will allow you to scale quicker. So you need to be conscious about finding a way to invest outside of just your local market.
Good stuff. What's one mistake on a deal specifically or business in general that if you could do it over, you would take that do-over?
I would, with some of my business partners, I would date before I marry them and jump in. Sometimes I've jumped in too heavily with partners early on, and that has cost a lot of money.
Yeah, no, super, super important. What's the financial goal for your team for this calendar year? For this 2024, what are you guys like shooting for the moon for?
So we just launched our Rent to Retirement Academy program. This teaches people how to learn how to start investing out of state and building a business around rental real estate to achieve financial independence. Our goal is to bring 1,000 members into that community by the end of the year. We launched it in November and we have about 150 people so far. So we're on track for that. We want to close over 1,000 deals this year, which we were just shy of that last year by about 50 properties or so. And I think we certainly will reach that. And we want to acquire, and this is more on the personal side, we've set a goal to always acquire at least 20 million in our own assets every single year, because then we take accelerated depreciation on those and then offset all of our taxable liability for that year and hopefully into future years. And thankfully, it looks like the 100% bonus depreciation is coming back to 100% to 2023. We'll see. Maybe 2 weeks we'll have the final, but it looks like it's a bipartisan bill, so hopefully it's passing.
Yeah, awesome, good stuff. If you woke up tomorrow with $500 million deposited into your account overnight, what's the first thing that you would go out and purchase with that newfound money?
Dude, I would go and buy. Probably, I would use leverage, and I would go and buy. Well, is this after tax? Because I was going to say I would buy real estate and run the accelerated depreciation on it, and so I don't have to pay that much tax. But
there you go, more real estate. No, that's a good answer, and I hear that a lot. More real estate. You know, I'm talking to real estate investors, so it's great. What would you tell the person that's listening now that's looking to grow and scale their business? Maybe they're just doing a deal here and there. They're just trying to get more consistency.
Having right teams is really important, and I think a grind. And I've learned this the hard way, of course, for running multiple businesses in rental real estate and wholesaling and flipping, and even when we did our own management and turnkey. You gotta find where your best and highest use of your time is, and you need to buy yourself out of the job you're in and replace yourself, right? Hire good people. That's one of the biggest things for scalability is hiring good people. Have a hiring process, interview multiple people, and hire people that are smarter and more motivated than you, and teach them. Don't be fearful that they're going to take over the business. Like, you got to get over that scarcity mindset, abundance mindset, and teach them how to replace you, so then you can focus on scaling. And that's probably the biggest pivotal moment. Like, if you haven't done a deal yet, or you're in those first, then go do a deal. Quit worrying about losing money and not having all the answers. Go do a deal, because that's going to build your confidence. But if you're like trying to go from like whatever it is, $1 million a year to 3 million, or whatever case you're in, replace yourself, hire good people.
Yeah, that's a really big gem. And you dropped a lot of gems, but that's been, I think, for me, in my entrepreneurial journey, hiring good team members, like that's kind of the linchpin of everything, right? Last question, and this is something that I'm just starting. I probably should have already started this, but what does send more offers mean to you in your business?
Offers is the gatekeeper, right? If you're not making offers, then you're not doing deals. And that is like, and this probably ties into your last question as well, Brandon, but like, and I love the message and, you know, what you guys are doing as well, but just the concept, send more offers, get more deals done, spend more, get more offers out there. That means have more deals to evaluate. That means spend your money on marketing. But this goes into the last question. Like, if you're going to have to spend money, don't be afraid to spend money on your business. And the best place to spend money, in addition to hiring good people, is on marketing. Trial stuff out. Like, you gotta spend money to make money. And a lot of people are really stringent on that. But man, it's all about offers, right? Find the deals, have the offers come to you, make the offers. That's how business grows. I love it.
Love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Great. Well, look, I love everything that you guys have going at Rent to Retirement. Tell the listeners how they can reach out to you, learn more about the community, and following you on social media, and maybe your website as well.
Best thing they can do is go to the website. We have our podcast, so we talk about all things real estate, a lot of market analytics to identify, you know, the best markets throughout the country. We have, of course, our turnkey inventory that you can choose from, but we have a lot of, you know, just available resources for anybody that is interested. So our website is renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. If you're listening in the car, you can text REI to 33777 and get on our dispo list. But, you know, our goal is to connect with you, learn about your goals, criteria, timeline, resources, share some market information. And hey, if the turnkey route is something that might benefit you in your investing journey, fantastic. If not, let us share some resources for you. And you know, you can obviously check out all our social YouTube channel and stuff there as well.
Love it. Good stuff. Well, this has been great, Zach. I really appreciate it. You know, I love what you guys are doing. I'm definitely going to be following along in your journey, and hopefully we can put some deals together too in the future.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. This has been a fun conversation, and yeah, looking forward to just killing it in 2024. It's going to be an exceptional investing year.
Awesome. Good stuff. Guys, as always, head over to sendmoreoffers.com. There's nothing for sale, just a bunch of great information and show notes from our very best guest. Best way to connect with me is at sendmoreoffers.com. And if you have a deal in Atlanta, would love to connect with you, help you get it over the finish line. Sendmoreoffers.com. As always, guys, send more offers, do more deals. Till next time, peace.
That's all for this episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes. But we know you're craving more knowledge to get yourself ready for that next deal. To schedule a call with Brandon to learn more about how to do deals consistently without seller appointments in a repeatable way, be sure to visit us at sendmoreoffers.com. And be sure to tune in for the next episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show.